All right, let's go live. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here, and welcome to the hot zone. Now, looks like they've got the entire city of Jerusalem locked down right now because of a large mass shooting that took place just on the north end of Jerusalem earlier this morning, about 10:30 this morning. And we're going to talk about what happened and what's being done about it. Also, the Houthis continue to fire drones at Israel. Over the weekend, a drone struck the airport in Eilat, that's the southern city of Israel down on the Red Sea, and closed the airport. One person injured, and more drones coming. So we'll talk about that as well. And we're going to cover all kinds of other fun stuff that's going on here, in Israel. And I'm not going to have a lot of time today to talk about where I am right now, which is I'm in Guyana, coming to you from my hotel room today. Do me a favor, folks, if you're just joining us, post in the chat where you're watching from, and make sure you hit that like button as well. It's amazing to see how many people come in from just all over the world: Utah, Kansas, England, Oklahoma, Eastern Kentucky. I was so far twice since I've been here in Georgetown, Guyana. I've had people chase me down and say that they recognize me. That's just amazing to me, just incredible. I was in the marketplace, just walking on the street the other day, and you know how when you're in a big open market or walking out in the street, if somebody starts saying, "Hey, sir, sir," normally I'm used to, well, somebody wants to sell me something. So I just usually ignore it and act like I don't understand, or didn't think they were talking to me. I just keep walking. And that's what happened. The guy was saying, "Sir, sir," and I just kept walking. And then he kept coming. He just kept following me and, "Sir, sir, sir." And I finally, other people started pointing and said, "Hey, that guy's trying to get your attention." And so I was like, "Oh," and I turned around, and this guy came running up and he said, "Oh my gosh, I've been watching you since October 7th. That's incredible. I can't believe you're here in Guyana." And he proceeded to tell me everything that I have talked about in the last week. So he obviously is a real fan. Uh, amazing, amazing. So thank you to all of you who are faithfully watching. And if you're just joining us, if you've never watched before, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can find out when I go live, which is almost every day, from all over the world. And so I appreciate all of you. There's somebody from Tel Aviv and Saskatchewan, Canada, Slovakia. I mean, just all over the place. It's crazy. So anyway, thank you very much for being a part of it. Like I say, it's a sad day in Jerusalem today, as an active violence attack took place at the Ramot Junction. Now I'm going to show you on the map here where that is. We'll go look at the map. If you look here at Jerusalem, uh, let's see if I can pull up that map here. There we go. Uh, this is the junction where this took place, this road junction. Very busy place where people come from several different areas and get on the bus. And of course, public transportation is a big thing in Israel. I won't take public transportation because public transport sites are usually very big targets. As a matter of fact, in Jerusalem, every bus stop has like bollards around it because of ramming attacks. Many of the roads that you walk on in downtown Jerusalem, especially, have bollards all along the roads because of ramming attacks. But in this case, what we know so far is that two assailants were driven to the site in the Ramot Junction right there. And again, I'll zoom in here. That's the junction there. If we zoom out, you can see this just on the north end of Jerusalem. Two assailants came there from the area of Binyamin in Samaria. They got out of the vehicle, got on a very crowded bus, and began firing on the bus. Then they got off the bus and continued firing. And the whole thing lasted maybe 60 seconds, but they managed to unalive at least 6 people so far. 20 more were shot. And the 2 assailants were also neutralized at the scene by a couple of armed citizens, one off-duty IDF. Apparently, both the people that were armed were Haredi, that is ultra-Orthodox, and were legally armed. And one of them was a commander in the new ultra-Orthodox IDF unit that has been stood up as they've started to draft the Haredi into the IDF. So again, I mean, there's a whole lot to take away from what just happened here. But first thing I want to do is show you a video from the scene and we'll talk through it here. And so take a look. You can actually hear the shooting begin. And then you'll see people start to run from the right side of the screen. See people running there. Now, one thing that I just want to point out that I notice whenever I see things like this is just how few people can actually run, can actually sprint. I mean, there are just so few people who apparently keep themselves in good enough condition that they can take off at a dead sprint. And you might think, well, if somebody was shooting at me, I would definitely be able to run, even though I haven't done it since high school. But that's not true. That's not true, because your body is, if you spend most of your time sitting and you're out of shape, your body changes to accommodate your normal posture, which is sitting, and your hip flexors shorten up, your Achilles and your other tendons in your legs shorten up. And if you are forced to try to run and get away to save your life, you can't do it. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the list of people who were killed so far, many of them were older, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so this just goes to show how important it is to try to keep yourself in shape. And I make it a point to test myself and to not only be able to, go for a long jog, couple, 2-3 miles, whatever, but actually do like a 60-second sprint all out. My friend used to say that there are only a few times in your life where you have to go 100%. But when those times come, you better be ready and able to go 100%. So we're going to watch this video again and continue to talk through it. But I want you to think about that as you see these people sort of shuffling away, many of them very overweight, very out of shape, elderly, that sort of thing. And look, if you're 65, 70 years old, of course you're not going to be able to, beat 20-year-olds in a quarter mile. That isn't the point. The point is you should be able to run for 50 yards if you have to. And even I've seen 80-year-olds that could do that. Most of the things that we associate with aging are not actually due to aging. They're due to oxidation. That is lack of use. So use it or lose it. This is the kind of thing that, if you ever find yourself in this situation, there are the quick and the dead. So take a look. So again, this is a dash cam from a car. You can hear the shooting start, and people start to run, and some of them sort of waddle away. I don't think anybody in there is actually sprinting. Now watch this hero taxi driver. This guy's a hero for sure. He goes around, I want you to watch the guy in the center of the screen. He goes around and look at the window behind his head. Watch the window of that bus. 2 rounds just went through that window. He didn't even flinch. He didn't even notice. And what he's trying to do is get an elderly passenger out of the taxi and help the passenger get away. That guy's a hero. He could have just jumped out and ran off. But instead, he took care of his passenger, got her to safety, and that is about the end of it. You can see how quickly, if we go back to the beginning, how there were literally over 100 people in this area. Now, there's some things in this story that kind of don't add up to me. You see that guy there, he trips and goes down, trips over a lady's skirt, I think. I don't even see him get up, so I don't know if he got shot or what. Anyway, a couple of things that just kind of don't add up. Number one, the bus driver, the first reports say that the bus driver had stopped the bus because it was overcrowded and refused to go on because there were too many people on the bus. And so he got off the bus and walked away. I don't know if that's a thing because I don't take public transportation, but have you ever heard of that being a thing where you live? Like if there are too many people get on the bus driver just says, oh, I'm out. Sorry, can't drive anymore. And he just walks off. Now, later reports and unconfirmed reports have said that the bus driver got a phone call, stopped the bus, got off the bus, gathered his things, and fled before the shooting started, which might mean that he got warned. I mean, that's the assumption there, that he got warned ahead of time before this shooting took place. And right now, we don't know. What we do know is that the IDF and the police have locked down all of the entrances and exits to Jerusalem and are conducting a major manhunt looking for anybody who was a part of this operation. What we know so far about the assailants is they believe that they were tied to the Islamic State, not to Hamas, not to Hezbollah, not anything PIJ or anything like that. They were actually ISIS operatives who had infiltrated through the fence from Jordan. Now, this is another thing that's come up here, is the fence that separates Jordan from Israel is being rebuilt. And it needs to be rebuilt because there are many places where I've driven along it and it's just a chain link fence. And there are tons of places out there where there's nobody around. It's, remote areas, and they could easily just cut a hole in that fence and come right through from Jordan. The fence between Syria and Israel in many places is mined. There are landmines, but not so much on the border between Jordan and Israel. And so some of the complaints I've seen from people in Israel are that Palestinians, people that shouldn't be there, are able to illegally cross that fence easily. Now, there's two fences. There's the fence between Jordan and Israel, and then there's the fence between East Jerusalem, or not East Jerusalem, but Judea and Samaria, A zones, and the B and C zones. So when you drive into Judea and Samaria, you'll see these big, look like Trump walls or big concrete barricades that completely surround some settlements out there. And those are actually Arab settlements that are fenced off because the people that live in them are not allowed to just freely move into Israel proper. And those fences also have big problems. Many holes in those fences. And as a matter of fact, there's been a lot of discussion on Israeli social media recently about that problem because they say, look, it's just a matter of time before we get another attack through there because those fences are so porous and they've got holes in them, they're cut down, whatever. And there are tons of Palestinians crossing every day into Israel. Now, the majority of those Palestinians who are crossing are doing so to go to work. They get jobs under the table, working construction and different things like that. Right across the street from my apartment in Jerusalem, there's a construction site that's been working on this high-rise building for the entirety of the war. And they've never stopped construction, even when the war first started. They were over there jackhammering all day and all night. And all of the guys that work at that site are Palestinians. Now, I don't know how many of them are legally there. Maybe they're Arab Palestinian Christians who live in East Jerusalem or something like that. Uh, those people, there are plenty of Arabs in Israel, about 20% of the population, who can go anywhere they want in Israel. And so it's not uncommon to see Arabs, non-Israeli, non-Jewish people driving around in Jerusalem or walking around or whatever. But you can tell when you go to these construction sites because everybody is Arab. Okay, whether they could be Christian, at the YMCA, which is a hotel I stay at from time to time. All the employees are Christian Palestinians, and so it's very complicated. But suffice it to say, there are a lot of people coming illegally from A zones in Judea and Samaria into Israel, most of them to work, but some of them not to work, to actually commit acts of terror. And, ironically enough, I believe Emmanuel Macron is meeting today with Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority. Will be shaking hands and hugging and kissing the guy who is responsible for the pay to slay program, where they pay Palestinians to commit acts of terror and pay their families even if they're killed in the attempt. In this case, these guys were using illegal firearms that were likely smuggled into Israel. They were looks like there's a homemade variant of a submachine gun that they see from time to time in Israel, and that's what these guys were carrying. You can hear some automatic gunfire if you listen to the tapes of the shooting. So some of it was semi-automatic and some of it was automatic. Bottom line is, it could have been a whole lot worse if it hadn't been for a couple of armed civilians. And this is something that we say all the time when things like this happen in the United States, that it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. And the more good guys with guns that they can get on the street, the safer everybody will be. Now, I know a lot of people think that, no, we just need to get rid of all the guns. Well, good luck with that, because guns can be 3D printed these days. And as we just saw in this attack, you don't have to get a gun from a gun manufacturer. There are guns that are easy to make. There are lots of homemade guns floating around. That being the case, you've got to have good people with guns to stop those people, because otherwise only the bad people will have the guns. Now, since the war started in Israel, they've had more than 400,000 people apply for gun permits in Israel. And to that I say, more power to them. They ought to all be given their permits. However, here's what's maddening about that. Of the 400,000 people who have applied for a gun permit in Israel, only 165,000 have received their permits. The rest are still waiting or have been denied. And so the way that gun permitting works in Israel is that it's essentially like Maryland or New York, where it's not a shall issue state, it's a may issue state. That means when you apply for a gun permit in Israel, the government makes a determination of just how bad you need it. And if they don't think you need it badly enough, they won't give you the permit. That's insane, because before the war, there were people that lived in the kibbutzim that were attacked on October 7th, right on the border of Gaza, who had applied for gun permits that had been denied because the government said, you don't need a gun. It's not dangerous enough. You don't need one. This is the crazy thing about May issue gun permitting. Now, if you live in the United States, your gun permit should be the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Point, period, end of story. The state I hail from in Nevada and in, I have my lodge in West Virginia. Those are constitutional carry states where anybody that's 18 or over and doesn't have a criminal record can carry a firearm. You can carry it openly or concealed. It's up to you. And there are a few places where you're not allowed to carry a firearm, like airports, post offices, government buildings. But other than that, you can carry pretty much anywhere. Now, I'll tell you, when I'm in West Virginia, I carry a gun everywhere. I carry it to church. I carry it to the bank. I carry it to the grocery store. I carry it around the farm when I'm just working. And I don't always have one on me when I'm around the farm, but I definitely always try to carry one when I go out on the town. My wife carries a gun from time to time. My kids carry guns more than I do when they're there. And a lot of people think, oh my gosh, that makes it so dangerous. Guns are so dangerous. Well, the place where we live in West Virginia is very safe. The rate of gun violence in West Virginia is much lower than places where guns are much harder to get legally, like Chicago and Maryland and New York, New Jersey, places like that. What we find is that the places where it is made easier for law-abiding citizens to be able to protect themselves legally, the world gets to be a safer place. That ease doesn't, sure, does it make it easier for bad people to get their hands on a firearm? Yes, it does. However, that is offset by the fact that it's easier for good people, law-abiding people, to get a tool that they need to protect themselves, and that functions as a deterrent to the bad people. So the bottom line is, when everybody can have a tool to protect themselves, it tends to make for a more polite society. And if you're not from the United States, if you're from the UK or Australia or someplace like that, Canada, you might not believe that, but I'm telling you, come to the United States, go to the places that are constitutional carry states, like Arizona and Nevada, and there's a bunch now, West Virginia. What you'll find is that you're safer there than you are in the places that are not constitutional carry states, where you have to actually get a permit to carry a firearm. And so, we also see in places where they've made it all but impossible for civilians to protect themselves, places like Great Britain, there's no shortage of violence. Now, they have a much lower rate of gun violence, of course, but they have a much higher rate of violence by terrorists and bad people using knives, using cars, using acid, etc., because people just find other ways to do that. Now, the rate of gun violence in the United States is higher than countries like England and Canada and things like that. But if you were to take gang violence out of it, I guess what I'm getting at, what I'm saying is that gun violence in the United States is mostly attributable to gang violence. And so if we address the gang issue, we would not have so much problems with a gun issue, okay? Jack says, this is a reason I moved from California to Arkansas. Absolutely. I don't want to go someplace where they're going to punish you for protecting yourself if you find the need to do so. Okay, so anyway, back to Israel. 400,000 people have applied. Only 165,000 people have been granted a firearms license since the war began. That makes about 370,000 people in Israel who currently hold a license to carry a concealed firearm when they're not on duty with an IDF or something like that. What we typically see when there is an active violence attack in Israel is that it is, at least in my experience, from this anecdotally, from having spent so much time there since the war began, it seems like most of the active violence attacks like that happen at crowded places where people are waiting to get on or off buses, and B, are stopped by some civilian or off-duty police officer, IDF soldier, something like that, who happens to be there carrying a firearm. You see a lot of open carry in Israel because a lot of people are not allowed to have pistols, so they carry their fully armed M4 or something like that, AR-15, M16 variant, strapped over their shoulders, and it is a little incongruous for people that aren't used to it to come to Israel and see a you know Jewish mother with her 4 kids pushing a stroller with an M4 strapped over her back. Typically, those people are not the people. At least I've not seen one instance yet where a terrorist was stopped by a Jewish mom with an M4. But as I said, they are typically stopped by civilians or off-duty police officers or soldiers who happen to be carrying. So the logical answer to that would be more people should be carrying firearms. More good people, more law-abiding citizens in Israel should be allowed to carry firearms. Now, the other issue that we have is training. It's difficult to get firearms training in Israel, and that's because there aren't a lot of ranges. There are some, maybe a dozen or so for the whole country, but not near enough for the influx of people who are getting firearms for the first time that are not training with them. And let me tell you something, folks. If you carry a tool like that on your person, if you carry it in your purse, that's not a good idea. But if you carry it in your car, it'd be better to carry it on your person than in your car. But whatever. But if you carry one of those things and you are not actively dry firing at least once a week, maybe doing 100 dry fires where you're just drawing and aiming and pulling the trigger over and over and over again to get that muscle memory in there. If you are not going to the range once a month or so, putting 200-300 rounds downrange, you may actually be more of a liability than an asset in a situation like this. I Of course, with my travel schedule, I don't get to shoot near as much as I like, but I do have a range at my home in West Virginia. And so when I'm home, I try to go out and, get up to speed. And of course, over the course of my life, I've probably fired over 1 million rounds, well over 1 million rounds, probably a couple million. And so being trained to do that, keeping those skills sharp is important. If you live in the United States and you have a firearm, my question to you is, how many rounds have you fired in training in the past year? Post that in the chat, okay? Would you say, I have a firearm, but I have not been to the range in the last year? If so, you need to get to the range. I know it's a pain. I know it's expensive. There are ways that you can get around that. Somebody mentioned the Mantis X, and there are quite a few other sort of dry fire training aids that you can put a little laser bullet in your weapon, and there's a little laser target that you can set up in your house, and you can sit there and go click, 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 and practice your aim. But really, it's practicing your drawing, acquiring a sight picture, and pulling the trigger that's important. And you can do that without actually going to the range, just by dry firing. Somebody says about 300 rounds. I'm just looking at boxes. No more range for Canadians. Does paintball count? No, it does not. Unless you're drawing a paintball gun from your waist and firing it, that kind of thing. And look, I realize it. Carrying a tool like that, it's heavy, it's bulky, it's uncomfortable, and it's dangerous to some extent. However, I believe that as a man, I should make people safer wherever I go. And I need to be equipped to do that in every way. So somebody said 400 in the last year. So Joseph Dixon, you're about on par with most police officers in the United States. Uh, my understanding from the research I've done is that most police officers in the U.S. fire about 400 rounds a year in training. That's not near enough. 400 rounds a month would be much, much better. And they usually don't have the excuse of saying they can't afford the ammo because they get all the ammo they want to train for free. So it just comes to down, are you going to make it a priority? Are you going to be serious about being able to protect yourself and your loved ones and the people around you? Uh, so All right. So, okay, let's move on from that. Just to recap, two assailants attacked a junction just to the north of Jerusalem. So far, 6 people have lost their lives, and 20 people have been injured. The IDF and the police have shut off all the entrances and exits to Jerusalem and are conducting a very thorough search. They've also surrounded the community in Benjamin, in Samaria, that they believe that these assailants came from. And they've also arrested one guy who they believe was the driver who dropped them off at the location before they committed their act of terror. The 2 assailants were neutralized at the scene by armed civilians or off-duty IDF soldiers, both of whom I believe were ultra-Orthodox Haredim. So that's what we know so far. And I want to move on now to what's going on with the Houthis. Over the weekend, the Houthis fired a half a dozen or more drones at Israel. And according to the Houthis, they were targeting Ben Gurion Airport, they were targeting Dimona, the nuclear facility, they were targeting the airport in Eilat, which is down in the south, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one drone managed to get through and landed at the arrivals hall in Eilat. One person was injured in that blast, and the airport was closed for a little while, and now it's back open again. That airport is not used all that much, but one thing that's interesting about the airport outside Eilat is it's right near the border with Jordan, and there's a massive, like 50-foot tall fence between the airport and the Jordanian side, and that's to stop people from firing RPGs at the planes as they're landing and taking off. And that's just crazy to me that they have to do that. There's a big metal fence. I mean, very, very tall. One of the tallest fences I've ever seen. That is arrayed on the border to keep planes from getting shot at from the Jordanian side over there. So the Houthis claim that all of their drones got through and have damaged targets in Israel. That's not true. Some were shot down. They did an investigation of the one that got through and found out that the IDF actually saw it on radar but mischaracterized it as not a threat. They were already tracking the other ones that were threats that were shot down. Some of them just fell in open areas. I've got a picture of this one, which fell in Saudi Arabia. So you can see the size of these, which, you know, they're pretty serious. This is not a drone like a DJI, you know, drone or anything like that. This is a large drone that can travel, you know, 1,000 kilometers. And so this one, okay, obviously fell without blowing up. You can see the propeller on the back there, and see how far, you know, what that looks like. So I guess what that means is the IDF could have shot all of them down if it had not mischaracterized that one drone, thinking it was a actual legit civilian aircraft. Imagine how challenging it is when there's aircraft flying all over in the skies between Jordan and Saudi Arabia, you know, between Israel and Yemen. There's a ton of aircraft in the air, and they've got to watch all of those things and figure out if they're drones or not. And of course, they have AI and computer programs to help them do that, but they're not foolproof. So file this under even a blind hog finds an acorn once in a while, because the Houthis are not, it's not a new kind of weapon. It's not like it's a hypersonic weapon or something like that. They just got lucky and got one through. Fortunately, nobody was killed, only one injured. But the Houthis fired another, I don't know, half dozen of them today, and continue to do so, even while the Houthi leadership is still in hiding. And Israel is preparing a response to this. What they may be able to pull off, since the leadership is all underground, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of creative surprises the IDF has up their sleeve. Okay, now let's move on to Gaza, and the actual topic of the live today, talking about President Trump, who gave an ultimatum on his Truth Social account. This is, by my count, the fourth ultimatum that he has given to the Hamas terrorists in Gaza since so far this year. And I'll just read you his message, which he posted on Truth Social. It says, everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. The Israelis have accepted my terms. It's time for Hamas to accept as well. I've warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will not be another one. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Okay, now, that's great. I am very happy to see President Trump, uh, you know, giving an ultimatum to Hamas. The problem is, as I said, this is the fourth ultimatum by my count that he has given. If you remember back in February, he said all of the hostages must be released by Saturday or all hell will break loose. Well, here we are. You could argue all hell is breaking loose for sure, and I'll show you more of that in just a second, so stick around. But the United States is not doing it. Israel is doing it. Hamas came out and said, sure, we'll talk as soon as Israel gives up and leaves Gaza completely and leaves us in charge. That was the response from Hamas to President Trump's thing. And why? Because people are starting to get to the point where they don't take President Trump seriously, because if you're going to give an ultimatum, you better back it up. And President Trump is really good at ultimatums and not really good at backing them up. So he's given 2-week deadlines to Vladimir Putin like 100 times now. Nothing happens. He's given deadlines to you know, for all sorts of things, and then he just sort of moves on. So that is not a power move on the part of President Trump. He's hoping that he can scare people into doing what he wants. But as it turns out, you really can't scare people into doing what you want if you don't back up what you say. So it's unfortunate that I have to say that, because again, I like to see President Trump talking like this. I would just like to see him acting as well. Now, the Israelis are doing everything they can to make good on their promises to visit the plagues of Egypt on Gaza. And so I want to show you a couple of, they're going into Gaza now, and are Gaza City, that is, and are destroying many of the high-rise buildings. They're starting with destroying the high-rise buildings in Gaza. Why? Let me show you. The Israelis put out a graphic, and so let's take a look at this graphic. Here's Gaza, and it's zooming in on Gaza City. Now, there's Gaza City. As we zoom in on this area, you can see a lot of high-rise buildings, and one in particular, which is one that they flattened a couple days ago. And what the graphic shows is that these tall buildings are being used as intelligence gathering centers, hubs for Hamas. So they put up these cameras so they can see the IDF approaching. Inside, they have intelligence gathering equipment, which is allowing them to watch the IDF. They've got sniper and anti-tank firing positions, command and control components, and the IEDs, remote detonated bombs all around the thing. There's also tunnels that go under these buildings and connect them to other buildings in the area. And when you look at all the buildings they've marked there that are being used. These are buildings they know are being used by Hamas. I want to show that part again, and I'll just stop it right there when it zooms out, because all of these buildings are buildings that they know Hamas has weaponized to collect intelligence and allow them to have own the high ground, so to speak, in Gaza. And so what is Israel doing to these buildings? Well, they're doing this. Kaboom! Taking the buildings down. Here's another one, a better shot. That's the first strike. That's a big building. Look at that. And all these people. And there goes the missile. You can see the missile there at the left of the screen. And interesting to me to hear what the Palestinians are saying on that. They're not saying Allahu Akbar. So when they're watching their own buildings get blown up, God is not so great. Allah is just not so great. They're saying, "Wallah, wallah," like, "Oh God," you know. So Israel is still in the state. Now they are pushing into Gaza City. They are advancing slowly and methodically into Gaza City. Of course, the UN and the Europeans and people are all wringing their hands and getting their undies in a wad over this and saying, "Oh, Israel is just targeting civilians." Well, the very fact that we have such good videos of strikes happening in Gaza tells a different story. What that tells us is Israel has already warned the people to get away from that building. We're about to flatten this building. You better get away from it. And everybody backs off, sets up their cameras, and films the strike. And if they didn't do that, you would see hundreds of people under the rubble of those buildings. But instead, there are none or very few. The very few who refused to leave when Israel warned them. They warned them more than once for each one of those strikes. And that makes defeating Hamas more difficult for Israel because it warns Hamas to get out of the building as well. And so they believe, I saw today the numbers that Hamas still is likely to have 25 to 30,000 fighters left. That means they've recruited a lot more because they were down to about 6,000 at one point. And there are tons and tons and tons of military age males in Gaza that Hamas can forcibly recruit if necessary to, do that, to continue to fight Israel. So this is nowhere near over. Israel is trying to do what they can to safeguard the hostages, even though it puts them at greater risk for them to push into the areas where they're likely being held. But when the IDF is done with Gaza City, it's likely to look like Beit Hanun or Rafah. It's not going. There's not going to be a lot standing. Okay. Somebody's wondering about my microphone right here. This is my microphone. Somebody asked where I am right now. I'm in Guyana, which is right next to Venezuela. And I've been here for a couple days, and I'll do a report about Guyana later. I just don't have time today to do it because I'm still out collecting news. There's a lot to talk about with Venezuela and Guyana, so you're going to want to stay tuned, okay? This is, I'm not wearing my shirt inside out. This is my microphone, and it's got a little magnet on the outside that connects it to my shirt. So I appreciate all of you, your concern for my wardrobe choices. As you probably have guessed by now, I'm not much of a slave to fashion. Okay, so the last I want to get to are questions. As we just in the last few minutes here, we got about 10 minutes left. So let me go open the questions document, and we'll see what questions we have for today. James Junkin asks, is there any evidence of who did it? Yeah, so far they believe that it was 2 ISIS operatives who had infiltrated into Israel through Jordan. By His Love says, didn't Israel take some houses in East Jerusalem the other day? Yes, they did. They're doing that on a daily basis. And if they find out that these guys lived in Judea and Samaria, their standard procedure is they will go in and destroy their houses, because you don't get to have nice things if you're going to be a terrorist. Peter O'Toole says, I'm starting to question the Israel military. How are the Houthis still firing missiles at this stage of the game and no progress on hostages yet? You say you control 90% of Gaza. They don't control 90% of Gaza. They control 71% as of today. And there was even a missile fired over the weekend, or a rocket fired out of Gaza at Israel, and was taken down by an interceptor. Nobody injured. So it's amazing. It really is amazing. What that tells you is not how poorly the IDF is doing. It tells you how unbelievably militarized Gaza was. And of course, talking about the Houthis, you can, unless you're going to carpet bomb the Houthis, it's very difficult to take them out because they operate from civilian areas. Israel won't bomb civilian areas without giving the civilians a chance to get away first. And so it's Israel that is purposefully hamstringing themselves in order to keep from killing civilians. So yes, it's frustrating to see. And, Israel tries to make up for that with its more creative operations like Operation Grim Reaper and things like that. But bottom line is they are taking it very slow and methodically. And so if Israel wanted to carpet bomb the Houthis, they could do that, and they could take out all of the civilian infrastructure, every gas station, every power plant, every water facility, and they could leave Yemen in a much worse position than it's in now. It's already in a famine mode. There's like 9 children under 5 that are dying every day in Yemen of hunger. Okay, so that is the fault of the Houthis. It's not the fault of Israel. But Israel could make things a whole lot worse in Yemen if they wanted to, but they're trying to be moral about it. And some people might say that it just draws out the suffering longer. It would be better if they made it more acute and intense for a shorter period of time. We've argued that about Gaza in the past as well, but that's not the way that Israel has chosen to play it. Derek Wilson says, do you think drones are what Revelations is talking about when it comes to locusts that attack people? Yes, I do. Actually, I've been doing a lot more study on the book of Daniel, like Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation recently, specifically in context of what that extrapolates out to when you extrapolate out modern technology, geopolitics, cultural shifts, and things like that. And we can talk more about that later, but I'm doing some more research on it and find it really fascinating. Lord Peanut II says, Arab Israelis are also Israeli civilians. Would you give them guns? Absolutely. Look, if you have proven yourself to be a law-abiding citizen, then I don't think Israel can say we're only going to give guns to Jews. That wouldn't be right. You have to give people the ability to protect themselves until they prove that they're not able to do that. Now, does that increase the risk of terrorists getting guns? Well, yeah, but the terrorists are getting guns anyway. And if they can't get them, they're making them. So I think the incremental increase in risk is worth the freedom of giving every law-abiding citizen the chance to protect themselves and their families. Nico says, did you see the IDF soldier running to the bus with a weapon? I think that guy was a Haredi commander, they said, but I didn't see it in there. Lord Peanut says, okay, I already got that one. Arsenal says, I assume if I moved from the UK to Israel, I wouldn't be able to own a gun. Yeah, if you're a foreigner in Israel, you're not going to be able to own a gun. You'd have to be Israeli. If you come to the United States, however, and become a legal resident, you can own guns in many places. Nico says, was kibbutz Nagushnim attacked? I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't hear about that. By His Love says, don't they all get trained in the Army? Well, they all get familiarized with firearms in the Army. It's a good question. But one of the things that people assume is that if you've been in the Army, you're an expert with firearms. Look, even in the Rangers, which is one of the more elite infantry units in the U.S. Army, we didn't train near enough with firearms. And we didn't train with pistols. By and large, I mean, I fired a pistol maybe a half a dozen times in the entire 4 years I was in the Rangers, because we didn't carry pistols, we carried rifles. So what I'm saying is the skills you learn in the military don't always translate over to civilian life. And I happen to know that many people who serve in the IDF reserves get actually dismally little training on their firearms. They just get familiarized with it, and they fire very, very few rounds in training every year. But yeah, it's a good question. Koos Vandenberg, that's something that needs to be addressed by the IDF for sure. Koos Vandenberg says, do you think South African ANC leaders will trouble they are causing with Israel in the war Gaza? I'm sorry, that question doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm going to skip it. Barb Scholes says, are women required to serve in the Israel army? Yes, they are. Moto Hobbit, Ben Frere says, don't some people say dry firing is bad for the firearm? That's false. You can dry fire, it's not bad for your firearm. Moto Hobbit says, why is it better to carry on your person than in your car? Because your person is what you're trying to protect. I mean, if you are in your car, like many times if I'm in my car, I will take my firearm out of my holster and put it on the seat next to me or someplace nearby, just because it's more comfortable and because I can reach it quicker than I can seated. But if you are sitting in church and a assailant comes in and starts a mass active violence attack, you don't want to have to take the time to run out to your car to get your firearm to try to do something about it. Because a lot of people are going to die waiting for you to get to your firearm. We've seen that in multiple mass shootings in the United States, at churches where there was a guy who lived across the street who was going to the church, and when the shooting started, he had to get up and run across the street and get his weapons out of their safe and all that kind of stuff and bring them back to the church. In the meantime, half a dozen people lost their lives. So that's why. Christopher Gaynor says maybe this time warnings were given especially and it was televised. Still doesn't make the killing of innocent children, women and children, and hungry children right. Christopher, if you're talking about in Gaza, every time the IDF drops a bomb on a building, they warn the residents of that building in some way first. They either call them on the phone, send them a text message, drop a what they call a knock bomb on the roof that warns people this building's about to get pancaked and gives them an hour or two to get out. If you don't believe that's happening, you just haven't been to Israel. I mean, I've been there and I've seen it. I've sat next to the people that are making the decisions to drop bombs on things. They have a lawyer there with them, making sure that they do it in the right order. Israel does not have any intent or any motivation to kill innocent women and hungry children. They just don't. They have every motivation to try to save those lives because they know that it's a war crime to just randomly kill civilians, even though there have been civilians that died, and many thousands of civilians who have died. That's not Israel's fault. If you're blaming Israel for the deaths that are happening in Gaza, then you're forgetting about what caused Israel to go into Gaza to begin with. You're forgetting about October 7th. You're forgetting about the tens of thousands of rockets. You're forgetting about the flaming balloons that were launched from Gaza. You're forgetting about the other incursions and the attacks that have happened out of Gaza. Okay? There would be no reason for Israel to be there and to be fighting in Gaza if it weren't for the attacks of Hamas. Because on October 6th, 2023, there was a ceasefire in place and there was no fighting going on. Hamas started this. Hamas is continuing this. And every single drop of suffering that takes place in Gaza should be laid directly at the feet of Hamas, who still continues to hold 48 civilians hostage in Gaza right now. So if you're blaming Israel for anything that's bad that's happening in Gaza, I don't know what to tell you, man. You're all upside down and backwards. All right. That's all I've got for today, folks. We just hit an hour. Thank you very much for watching. And I think that's the last question. How many casualties was there in the shooting? I'm assuming you're asking. There were 6 that have lost their lives so far and 20 people injured. There may be more who succumb to those injuries in the coming days. Let's pray that that doesn't happen. Okay. God bless you. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure you hit that like button. And folks, just a couple things before I get finished today. This is something that you're going to want to stick around and watch. I have something that's a bonus for you today. You've heard me talk a lot about investing in gold since we've gotten a sponsor for Preserve Gold. And as I travel more and more and I see what's going on around the world, I realize just how important it is to be diversifying your investments into things like gold. And Preserve Gold has done a great job of helping people understand that, helping people understand how to get started. And I got the opportunity the other day to interview the CEO of Preserve Gold. His name is Daniel Boston, and ask him why this is so important. So I want you to watch some excerpts from our talk, and I think you're really going to get a lot out of this. So don't go away. Stick around and watch this this little chat that I had between myself and the CEO of Preserve Gold, Daniel Boston. Take a look. Well, I've got a real special treat for you today, folks. I've got Daniel Boston, the CEO of our sponsor, Preserve Gold, on the line with us. He is coming to us from California, and I've been wanting to meet you face to face, Daniel, so this is the next best thing. I appreciate all that you do and appreciate your sponsorship for sure. Now, tell us a little bit about how Preserve Gold got started.
Sure. First of all, Chuck, we just want to say that we really appreciate you as well. Just based on, what's going on in the world right now with all the insanity and just really hard what to believe, what not to believe. You're just a voice of truth and someone I've always admired just watching your show for a while now. And so when we started this partnership with you, I was personally really thrilled. So we appreciate you as well. Preserve Gold was really founded because I've been in this industry for well over a decade, and I've just seen some bad actors and seen things in this industry I personally don't agree with on a moral level. And so I just knew there had to be a better way. So really the entire reasoning behind the launch of Preserve Gold was because I wanted to bring just an incredible asset class to investors in a way that's more morally appealing, I guess, if you want to say, from transparency and integrity with pricing to shipping metals out promptly when clients place orders. I mean, I've seen some just crazy things in this industry. So we just want to we really stand out and work really hard to take time with the people that we work with to provide education, transparency with the pricing. We want to make sure that people understand what they're paying for, what they're receiving, and that's what I would say really differentiates Preserve Gold.
Yeah, I was a stockbroker for 10 years, and one of the things that I was always struck by was how many different ways there were to lose your shirt in this industry, because not just of bad actors, but just arcane and complex instruments that people get talked into buying. I know that when it comes to gold, there are 100 ounces worth of gold in terms of paper gold out there for every ounce of physical gold that exists in the world, and that brings a lot of counterparty risk to the table when you're talking about investing in gold. What that means, folks, is that you could theoretically find yourself in a position where you tried to cash in and get physical gold for your gold contracts, and there weren't any. Just think of it like a run on the bank, and the bank runs out of money because they've leveraged themselves to the hilt. And so you can avoid that counterparty risk by investing in physical gold and silver, and that's one of the things I really like about Preserve Gold. So tell me about how that works for people who, let's say, want to invest and have it in their hand at home.
Yeah, Preserve Gold, we only deal in physical assets. These are physical bars, rounds, coins. We're not dealing with futures contracts, anything on a ledger or piece of paper. So you're not at the mercy of a third party fulfilling their contractual obligations or anything along those lines. There's really two ways you can go about acquiring physical metals with Preserve Gold, two programs that we offer. We have a direct purchase program where if you're looking to use cash savings, if you have money in the bank, checking account, savings account, money market CD, whatever it is, and you want to transition paper money into hard currency, then we can either ship those metals directly to you by UPS or FedEx with insurance. You got to sign for the metals before you take delivery. So you can rest assured knowing that you're going to receive those metals. And then the other program we offer is an IRA, 401k, or other form of qualified retirement account rollover, where you can take your pre-existing IRA, 401k, 403b, whatever it may be, transfer those funds over into what's called a precious metal self-directed IRA, completely tax-free, penalty-free transfer, which allows you to hold real physical bars, rounds, coins inside your retirement account. So instead of having paper assets in the account, you have hard physical metals in your account backing it up.
I think a lot of the people that watch my show are in the time of life where that would be a smart thing for them to do, because the average viewer of the podcast is 65. And so I talk about that a lot, but if you have a 401k, I think a lot of people can't quite wrap their head around, how do I put physical gold into an account that really just exists on a piece of paper at Schwab or someplace for me, because if I'm holding it, then how does the government know whether or not I'm spending it earlier or something like that? So can you walk us through how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So all you have to do is give one of our experts a call. They're going to walk you through and hold your hand through that entire process. There's an application that we send out to you where we will help you fill it out over the phone. It's a self-directed precious metals IRA application. And basically that allows the money that's in your existing IRA to be transferred over to the new IRA that we're establishing for you, completely tax-free and penalty-free. The metals are sent to a depository of your choice. The depository is not associated with the bank or with a bank or government or any institution like that. It's privately owned, held in your name, insured through Lloyd's of London. So you get $1 billion insurance policy through Lloyd's of London, fully covers and insures not only the metals in the depository, but also the metals themselves from things like floods, fires, terrorism, civil unrest, acts of God. So if anything happens to the depository or your metals while they're in storage, you're fully covered and insured. You get quarterly statements like you do with your retirement account right now, so you can track your assets in terms of price fluctuation. And then our team will be with you through the lifetime of the investment. So they'll be in touch with you. Usually it's every 30 to 90 days to give you updates, help you track the investment, and then we'll be advising on when we feel it makes sense to liquidate as well.
So I think it would be a good idea for a lot of people who are approaching or in retirement. I think there's a ton of people out there who have a 401k and they put it into stocks 20 years ago and they never really looked at it again. And so then they find themselves nearing retirement or in retirement, and they actually have a tremendous amount of volatility in their accounts. And that's why gold would be a good idea to at least have for part of your 10-15% of your portfolio. That's what I used to tell my clients when I was a stockbroker. Now, we just saw gold. I've never told people that you're going to get rich investing in gold, but so far this year, gold has outperformed the S&P 500 by like three and a half times.
Right.
And I mean, it's up 33% just this year. Why do you think that is?
There's quite a few reasons. So this predates Trump taking office a year and a half ago, or however long it's been now. But really, I think Trump is between a rock and a hard place and trying to figure out how to navigate the financial landscape that he finds himself in. Unfortunately, we're dealing with administrations in the past that seem to believe the best way to solve debt problems was by creating more debt, which is obviously unsustainable. And so, Trump's now in this position where he's got to manage what I think is a looming debt crisis. He's got to take some pretty tough actions to do that, or we're going to have to deal with the consequences. So when we look at things like tariffs play a very important role in trying to bring down our deficit, which is ultimately the goal that we're seeing. Ultimately with tariffs, the way that it works is businesses import goods from, whether it's China, Mexico, whatever it is, there's a tariff that's placed on that product. Businesses typically will either increase prices or they're going to eat the costs and then typically pass those costs along to consumers. Well, if you increase prices, now you're in a more inflationary type of environment. If you eat the cost, then you're probably going to see that reflect on a company's earnings reports. That's going to create volatility inside the market. So, but he's between a rock and a hard place, because if he does nothing, then you have this basically debt bomb that's going to spiral completely out of control. We just crossed $37 trillion. And it's a recipe for disaster. I think the direction that we were going would have been the worst economic crisis in this country's history. I think it would have made 2008 look pale in comparison. So President Trump has a responsibility to the overall health and welfare of America. And I think individuals have a responsibility to themselves and their own portfolios and their own retirement. And that's really where gold, I think, plays a very critical role in creating stability for this kind of uncertainty and volatility. I think just looking at how precious metals have performed, as you alluded to, I mean, gold just broke through $3,500, silver broke through 40, which is just huge. And I still think we're in the first or second inning of this move. The fact that we've seen prices move up like this, and we haven't seen real inflation come in, we haven't seen real volatility in the market get priced in, it's almost as if these prices are moving up in anticipation of something that's going to happen. And it makes sense to me because if you just look at central banks, for example, central banks are buying gold right now at record levels. This is the largest buying spree we've seen of gold at any time in our history. Not just the U.S. central banks around the world. You're obviously not buying that if you believe prices are going lower. And there's something, in my opinion, there's something in the water that's causing, prices to go up the way that they are. So whether we get a dramatic decline in the value of in the stock market, or we see a hit to the value of the dollar, these are all just tremendous tailwinds for gold and silver prices to go higher. Basically, when money rotates out of stocks and bonds during a market crash, when it rotates out of cash during periods of inflation, it just needs a place to go. And it tends to gravitate towards gold and silver first because they're the classic safe haven investments, and that's what causes prices to go up. So, if we use history as a guide, in 2008, gold prices doubled, silver prices more than tripled in response to the housing crisis. In 2000, it was the same thing. And you can just go throughout history. Anytime there's been economic uncertainty, whether it's market volatility, inflation, or anything along those lines, we've always seen precious metals outperform everything else.
I do find it interesting that central banks around the world are really jacking up the amount of gold that they buy, almost double or maybe more over previous years, usually about 500 tons a year, and it's been over 1,000 tons a year the last couple of years, I think. I guess you're right. I used to say when I was a broker that gold climbs a wall of worry. And we got plenty of things to worry about, I guess, in today's day and age. So that may be why. Well, Daniel Boston, thank you very much for taking some time with us. I really appreciate you. I know you're a real busy guy, and I hope to get a chance to get out to California sometime and come see you in person. And in the meantime, we'll keep talking. So thank you very much. How do people get a hold of Preserve Gold if they want to invest?
Yeah, Chuck, pleasure as well. And I'd love to meet with you in person, have you come down to our office and all that. Whether you're an experienced investor, you're doing this for the first time, again, we're very educational focused, so we will hold your hand through this entire process. We don't let anyone come into this market with their eyes closed. You can give us a call at our toll-free line, 877-444-0923. You can text Chuck to 50505. You can also visit our website, www.preservegold.com. You can also go to our dedicated Chuck Holton page, which I believe is preservegold.com/hotzone.
Correct. All right. Well, I hope people will do that, and I think it's a good time to do it. You're falling behind if you don't at least have some of your portfolio in gold and silver, folks. So again, thank you to Daniel for coming on with us, and we'll talk again.
As I always say, you cannot buy fire insurance on the house after the house is already on fire.
There you go. All right.
Pleasure talking to you, Chuck. Thank you.
Sure. No audio. There it is. Okay. Thank you very much for sticking around through all that. I just wanted to say I am in Guyana for another couple days, and I will be reporting on the Venezuelan situation as the U.S. continues to build up its forces in the region. What might be about to happen? I'm here, and if something pops off, I'll be here to cover it. God bless you.